here I am shipping items again. Here I am photographing items again. But the reality is I think we need to glamorize that more because that's
Yeah.
the only way you will have a business.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and coming back to my Going Full-Time series. I'm so excited to bring you today's interview. I got to sit down with my friend Ashley Wheeler, who you guys might know as Ashley Wheeler of 8. She's on Instagram and on YouTube, and she's a full-time reseller, but also a mom of 8 children. And we had a long conversation about what her day-to-day looks like, how she manages being a mom but also being a full-time reseller, a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and what made her decide to become a full-time reseller, and also how she and her husband are working together on this business. So I hope you will enjoy this conversation, and I hope you will follow Ashley on Instagram and subscribe to her YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I've been pretty good, staying busy. It's summer, so kids are home, like
Yeah.
they're in a lot of activities. At least I'm trying to.
And I know you have a few more at home than I do, and we're going to talk about that. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this.
I'm really, really excited to hear your perspective on a lot of different things. But before we get into all of that, before I bombard you with questions, why don't you tell everybody who may not know you yet who you are, what you do, and where they can find you?
Okay, my name is Ashley Wheeler. I am a full-time reseller and I do participate on YouTube as well as Instagram. I kind of share a lot of my journey and my tips and tricks along the way, and then just some of the awesome finds through Instagram and YouTube, and that's Ashley Wheeler of 8. And the 8 does stand for the fact that we have a total of 8 kids. So it's been a fun journey, and I love to be able to share with other parents who are trying to find how to make money from home, different opportunities and ways that it can be profitable.
Awesome. Yeah. So many questions that we're going to get into, especially how you manage all the things that you're managing. But before we get into that, for how long have you been reselling, and did you start off part-time and then transition to full-time? And what was your reseller journey like overall?
So I started part-time. I was working at an investment firm, and I think this was 2017. And in 2019, I had been doing that juggle. And at the time, because you think about 8 kids, that does even a couple years in between it, you've got a wide variety of ages. So we had at that point about 6 kids that were at home, and
Mhm.
trying to juggle the full-time thing with corporate America, the kids' schedules, the younger kids starting to get into school. So you've got preschool, which is generally like half day, like all these different things you're juggling. I got immensely overwhelmed. I was integrating reselling into the 4 o'clock in the morning, right before I got to work. I'd be packaging orders during my lunch break. I'd spend either Saturday or Sunday doing my photos. Like I had it down because I knew that there was potential for this to become full time. And in 2019, in the fall, it kind of really hit home, and I began to realize like my kids need me at home, and it's actually okay to let go. This is actually really good time because this is like quarter 4, and if you haven't heard of that before, like that is when all retailers are just at the peak of their sales. The majority of
Mhm.
what they make in Q4 almost beats out the rest of the quarter. So I was like, if I can just give enough effort through the holiday season, perhaps this can replace my income. And in January 2020, it actually did. I was able to replace what I was getting from my full-time job in that month. And obviously, we all know what happened in 2020. So it was kind of right at the perfect time. I remember sitting in like March, April, being in quarantine with my kids and going, this would not have been the case if I had stayed working. I
Mhm.
would have been the person that my advisor would want me to be at the office to unlock the door, and I'd be frantic trying to figure out where are my kids supposed to go. And I was like, I don't have that stress. And it was perfect. It was really awesome.
That is amazing that it worked out like that. Not that the
Yeah.
pandemic was amazing, but all
Right.
things considered.
Yes. Yes.
So I know that you and your husband, you work together on the reselling business, right?
Mhm.
So are you both full-time, and what does that look like working on this business as a married couple? I'm very curious about that.
Oh yeah. He loves reselling. So fun fact, he actually, when we first got together, was purchasing classic cars on Craigslist and flipping them. And he always jokes, but then when we first got together, he had a Nova and he ended up selling it for like 5 grand, which was pretty similar to what he bought it for. But he basically got that money to buy me an engagement ring. So
Oh.
it's been fun. He has always had that attitude of like making old things new and really bringing the worth back out into things. So we really coupled with this really well. Except me, I was more focused on the clothing. I love fashion, I love brands. He brings a different element in where he knows really good pairs of shoes. He knows how to polish things. He knows how to clean up hiking gear and camp gear and do different things with tents. He can look at a piece of metal and go, hey, this is a bike rack. And I'm like, I see a piece of metal. Like, I have no idea. He's like, no, this is really expensive. And then sells it for like 150 on Craigslist. So I love it because I feel like we both bring different strengths to the table and then we're able to work fluidly that way. And there's, I think, tasks that we've kind of separated on. So he loves to shop. I jokingly say he always shops until I drop because I feel like he can keep going beyond me. I'll be like, okay, I need to eat. It's time to go. And he's like, just hold on. And like 45 minutes later, we're still there. But he loves to do that, but he knows a lot of work is involved with that. So we get home, I count everything, we sort everything. And he knows that like that's how to help. There's other times when it's like, I need to list items, but Sarah needs to go to dance. So he's like, I got the dance, you keep the listing. So sometimes it's not even business related tasks that we're going back and forth with. Sometimes it's just him making dinner while I'm sitting on the couch getting items done, listed. So I love that we can kind of work that way, but I do have to communicate those things. If he gets home and I'm like, I haven't gotten XYZ done, he knows now, okay, this is what he needs to be doing in that role. And then vice versa too. You asked me if he's full-time. He is
Mhm.
not. He actually drives truck. He's been doing different arrays of that. When we first got together, he was a firefighter with the federal government. The year that we got engaged, he actually lost that job. We couldn't leave the area because we had joint custody of his 5 children. And we were like, that's just not an option. So he went from that point almost trying to jump jobs just to make the income it took 10
Yeah.
years for him to build. So that was a really, really hard season for us. But through that, he had different arrays of trucking jobs. And so he's always kept a really good skill set. And he finally found an employer who has different projects that they do, but it isn't always full time. So sometimes he's constant, it's a 40-hour week. Then there's other times like this week where he's had 2-3 days off. And that actually works really, really well for our schedule because on those days, he's like, okay, what do you need with reselling? What project can I help you with? What shoes do need to be cleaned? So that's kind of how we go together.
That is awesome. I wish my husband would clean shoes for me, or anyone really. It doesn't have to be my husband. Just anyone wants to come to my house
Right.
and clean shoes, have at it. It's one of
Right.
the tasks that I enjoy the least.
Right. Yeah. It's such a profitable market. And that's why I keep
Mhm.
buying those shoes. But then, like, not gonna lie, we've got a couple totes downstairs that have not been cleaned and they're not listed. And I'm like, I don't want
Yeah.
to clean them.
Yep. I accumulate shoes, and it's so funny. Like first I don't want to clean them, and then I just accumulate them because they're so easy to photograph, but I feel like I need to set up differently for shoes, and I don't even have a light box or anything. And it's really not a big deal. It's just I just don't
Yeah.
want to do it for one pair of shoes. So I wait until I have like five. And then it's like, why haven't I listed these Rothy's yet? That's like $70 just sitting
Oh,
around.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So I'm curious, between the two of you, you have 8 kids.
Yes.
How old is your youngest child, and just how do you even both work with
And
eight
make that all
kids and
happen.
successfully? I have one child, and it's stressful to say the least. So I cannot even imagine how you guys manage. So how do you make it all work?
It's kind of funny. My husband always says, like, the hardest jump is 2 to 3. And he's like, after that, it's just all logistics. And it's really funny, but it is true. And even though I haven't been reselling for the whole entire time we've been married, Jeff and I have always had different side hustles. One example of that is we got the kids involved and we would have them he'd buy PVC pipe, they'd spray paint them, and they'd make mini marshmallow shooters, and they would sell those at like the 4th of July booth. And it was great because then the kids got to learn, hey, you invest a little bit of money into something, you could make a huge profit. I mean, no joke, they would come home with almost $1,000 after
Wow.
one of those days, because they're just fun. They're just fun.
Yeah.
But so we've always kind of learned how to juggle with, you're working full time, you've got the kids, they have activities that they do. Some kids want to be bold and try to do 2 different sports at once. And then you also have your side hustle that you're doing. And sometimes I get the question, people are like, oh, do you want more? And I'm like, no, I need time and finances just to manage these 8, let alone like any more than that. And that's just the reality, is we've always wanted to have more time freedom, and we want to be able to have a life that doesn't feel like we're living paycheck to paycheck, that we can do things with the kids, even though we have a huge amount of kids. And one of the things that reselling did early on was it helped us save to bring all the kids, fly them down and go to Disneyland and be in California for 10 days. We had an Airbnb. We had my husband's sister's wedding that we got to go to. And it was so much fun, but reselling is what really paid for that. So that, I feel like, just because that's really been the start of our our marriage, it's been really easy to continue integrating it that way. It requires a lot of communication between the two of us. You know, he actually still has other endeavors that he does. And when we wake up in the morning, I ask him, what do you need to get done today? Because I know him. And if I need something, he will want to help me first, and he'll put his thing on the back burner. And I'm like, no, you need to finish your projects too. So what do you need to get done? And I'm not going to say anything until those things are done. So that's kind of how we ebb and flow. And with the kids, I mean, the 5 older, we have joint custody with their mom. Now, at this point, we actually only have 4 kids at home. The other 4 have graduated high school, and they still live fairly close. But, you know, we don't have that sort of dynamic that we used to have. But still, nonetheless, it's requiring the communication. It's figuring out if we need to do an Instapot or a crock pot, like meal for the night, or sometimes just go grab pizza. You know, we try our best to create a routine, but with the back and forth that we had with the 5 older kids, it was always really hard to figure out, what do we want to do as a family unit? Because we always have an additional parent kind of having a voice in that.
Yeah.
And then what are some of the habits we're wanting to create here? What are some of the chores we're wanting to create here? We do our best with that. And I think as you know, they're getting older, we're going to be able to have a little more fluidness, but it's not perfect. I mean, do you want to see something? There's so much laundry on the couch right now. Like, it's not perfect, but it gets done, and the kids are happy and they know where their clean underwear and socks are.
Grab something out of a bin. That's what I have laundry in like 4 different places right now, probably. And none of that is for reselling, mind you. And that's just our personal. Yeah, it's just, I think a lot of it is probably just embracing that there's always going to be a certain amount of just chaos and just not looking for, you know, perfection. I'm like, it is what it is, you know, as long as they're fed and clothed and, you know, reasonably happy.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I have to remind myself, because prior to being married, I was like, everything is organized, house looks clean, like everything is perfect. And like, I was not meant to have kids if that was going to be my life, like in adulthood, because that's just not the reality. There was the other day, I vacuumed, swept, and then shark mopped our floor, because it's kind of that vinyl floor. And I got done, probably went downstairs to do a little bit of reselling, and came upstairs, and there was like crumbs all over the ground. And I'm like, why do I even bother? And then I had that thought, I was like, I need one of those iRobots or whatever those are, because the consistent mess is just crazy. And I finally had to start telling myself, because it's so easy to look at the house and go, oh, I need to do something, or I need to clean this, or, you know, this person has this dance, this swim lesson, this soccer, you know, all these things you're juggling. I sometimes have to look at the house and just say, it has to wait. Like, I need to focus on work right now. I need to figure out what's going to be profitable for me and my family. This has to wait. Like, I need to let go of my OCD-ness and just go and do some work. So that's been another thing that kind of helps me too.
Yeah. I've been looking at the mess recently, and I'm just like, okay, which one of these things can I pack up and sell, because I need them out of my house. And if they can make us some money, even better, because let's face it, my kid has way too much stuff.
Oh yeah, my
Yeah.
kids too, and it has a lot to do with grandma. Grandparents are hilarious in our family. They spoil them like crazy, or like give them so many clothes. So half the time I'm like, okay, can we toss this in a bag and send it off to ThreadUp, or
Yeah.
is this just not sellable at all? Yeah, we're constantly doing that too.
Yeah. So speaking of grandparents and such, what is your support system like outside of, yourself and your husband and the kids if they're helping here and there, but outside of that, are the grandparents super involved? I know you guys are going on like thrift trips together and you're not always bringing the kids. So
Yeah.
can you share what that support system is like and also what it means to you as a family, but also as a business?
So Jeff's parents live in Idaho. So they're about 3.5, 4 hours away, which is better than where they were before. They were in Northern California.
Mhm.
So we still love to go over to Idaho. And I did a YouTube video about that recently where we vlogged over there. But we got to enjoy spending time with the grandparents. And then we were like, hey, peace out. We're going to go for like 3 hours and go shopping. So we took our 16-year-old and then us two and kind of looked around the Idaho area and different items to get.
Mhm.
And locally, my mom actually runs a daycare. So I have been
Oh,
very blessed and
nice.
fortunate for that because it's not just they're getting grandma time, they're actually getting time with other
Mhm.
kids. And we have three younger, as I've mentioned. So their ages are 9. Oh, I didn't even mention that earlier. Yeah, we've got 9, 6, and then our youngest is about to turn 5 next weekend or next week. And then the older
Mine
5
too.
range from, oh, really?
Yeah, in like
What day?
12 days, the 20th
Oh,
of
that is
July.
awesome. Yeah, hers is on the 14th. So,
Oh my God, they're like a week apart. That's so funny. He's turning 5 too.
oh, that's fun. So, is he going to
Yeah.
kindergarten next year then?
That's the plan, yes. And they're gonna keep him from 9 to 4. And I'm like, oh my God, the things I can do in those 7 hours.
Right? Yes. So, our daughter actually, she did preschool last year and she did full
Mhm.
days. And it worked because she was at the same school as her two older brothers. So, she felt more comfortable to do that.
Mhm.
But oh my gosh, once they were able to go back to that, school full time, that was a dream. Yeah,
Mhm.
you can get a lot done.
Yes.
Okay, and then the
Celebrate.
5 older range from
Mhm.
18 to I think 24. So, and then they're starting to date other people, and so then I feel like it's no longer even 8, it's like 8 plus that we have in our family, which is great. We love it. I could never see us having a small family. Like my
Mhm.
husband's too much of a kid in of himself, but with my mom, she loves grandbaby time. So, for example, we're actually going to go to Portland tomorrow, which is a 3-hour drive for us. And we're going to stay overnight and we'll get a ton of inventory, probably anywhere from 500 to 700 pieces in the
Mhm.
2 time day. Because it's not just me sourcing, my husband will come on those trips, but we'll leave Friday morning because we're going to drop them off at my mom's for daycare, and then they'll stay over the night, get some little quality grandma and grandpa time, and then we'll pick them up on Saturday. So that support system is there. We still try to be very mindful,
Mhm.
though. We don't want to take advantage of it. And so that's
Yeah.
why we did like a Friday to Saturday versus Saturday, Sunday, because I'm fully aware my mom has a ton of kids at her house all day. Like she needs a break too. And that time that we come back, we try to come back really, really quick, grab the kids. And sometimes we'll even like keep them home the following, like a day the following week, just to kind of really help offset that,
Yeah.
because we don't want them to get tired of it either. So the
Mhm.
support system is there. My mom understands. She's always been my cheerleader in whatever I wanted to do. She always told me that, you could shoot for the moon and the stars. And so I've always had that attitude. And so I'm really, really thankful because I feel like even as I've gone into things where I'm like, does this sound weird? Like, is it okay that I do this? She's like, you're doing awesome. Like, and then I can show the proof to my like stepdad, and he's like,
Mhm.
that's legitimate. I can't complain about it.
I love that. Yeah, I have had conversations with my mom, and in the beginning, she was like, well, but you have a PhD, so you're just gonna sell clothing online. And I'm like, yeah, why not? And then, a week later, she's like, you know what? I thought about it. If it makes you happy, then yeah, go for it. So I
Yeah,
love
and that's my mom's attitude too. She's
that.
not a like germs are a huge thing to her. I think it also has to do with the fact that she has toddlers drooling and everything
Yes.
all over the place. But I was like, she's like, I should go to the bins. I'm like, no, no, you shouldn't. I know you, and you would not like it.
I do think everybody needs to experience the bins at least once in their life, even if it's just to walk in and just walk right back out, but just to see it in person. I feel like it's such
Yeah,
an experience that you can't really describe it. You have to experience it.
yeah, absolutely.
So you go on these sourcing trips, like you said, for a weekend and you pick up a ton of inventory. Is this the only way you source, or do you have other ways of sourcing and getting inventory? And in general, what's your approach? What do you like to pick up? Is it, I mean, I'm guessing it's all about volume if you're picking up 700 pieces in one trip. But how do you select your inventory? Do you sell anything and everything, or is it still primarily clothing and shoes right now?
For just the fact of our size of our house, I mean, I'm very fortunate because as I mentioned, like we've had so many kids move out over the years. So I do have more rooms, but that's still like I have a wall of shoes because I have like the shoe shelf. And so that's, but I can still only hold, I think, like 250 shoes. And so clothing is just so much easier to store.
Mhm.
And so we really like to stay in the, clothing that be jeans, jackets, shirts. We still try to be mindful of what are going to be the things that give us a higher payout. But
Mhm.
I still can't help it. If I'm at the outlet and I see a nice Free People shirt, even if it's going to sell for 20, like I'm just going to pick it up.
Yeah.
But and I kind of gotten the attitude because it really comes down to what is available to me locally or just
Mhm.
what I'm willing to travel to. And I definitely had more opportunity to get more things by the pound. So we actually have a Goodwill outlet that's about 45 minutes away from us. But
Mhm.
in the Eastern Oregon and Washington area, there isn't a local Nordstrom's, there isn't a local
Mhm.
Anthropologie. So those are not the brands you typically find at our Goodwills. And so I was grabbing a lot of bread and butter items originally when I first started because one, they were cheaper, and two, it was what I was able to grab. Now we go and do these Portland trips, and it allows us to kind of, get a little bit of a higher ROI. I
Mhm.
think at this point, I think I'm at 22 or $25 that I'm getting,
Nice.
and as the average out. But I have started to branch more into like going to a consignment store or going to like Buffalo Exchange or Plato's Closet to try. I'm beginning to see which brands sell good for us for a higher payout. And
Mhm.
so I might be willing to pay $10 or $15 for
Yeah.
something if I know it's going to sell for 50 or 75. But I also really try to pay attention to where's the majority of our society right now. And they can't always afford those high amounts of things. So I love
Yeah.
having a good mixture because that $50 or $70 item I might sit on for a little longer.
Mhm.
The bread and butter, I kind of jokingly say pays for the bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you find
Yep.
the brands that continue to sell for you really frequently and then
Yeah.
have those other items that it's like, oh, that was a good day. You know?
Yeah.
So
I hear
that's kind
that.
of what we do. And then through COVID, it really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I realized how complacent I got with like the outlet is my comfort zone and I don't want to branch into paying $5 to $6 per item on something. But I
Yeah.
started to do wholesale and liquidation and I started to do research about pallets. And so that's
Mhm.
where we're headed. So our model might change a little bit, but I think always starting with what is closest to you, what you know, or is easy to learn is just the best way to do it. And then you can always grow and change your model later, which is the thing that I really love. And then
Mhm.
we'll throw in a little bit of retail arbitrage. If my husband's the best at it, he can go to like a Walmart or a Target and go into the clearance section, look up a
Mhm.
couple things on eBay, and then he comes home with like 30 flashlights for $9 and he says they're selling really good on eBay and we're now down to two of them. So he's really
Nice.
good at that kinds of stuff. Whereas that's a different market that I don't want to get
Mhm.
too into. At least right now. I won't say ever or never, but
Yeah. I'm trying to learn more about hard goods, but like I walk through this thrift store and I just look at everything and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. And
exactly.
I don't want to look it all up because I feel like I'm at this point where I think I've gotten clothing down for the most part.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's still stuff I
Yeah.
don't know, but like I can go through it quicker and I don't have to spend hours and hours just researching stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to do that again. But also, I try to pick up little things here and there. But yeah, it's a whole different world, hard goods, and there's just so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And then if that's not the stuff that you're watching or you're seeing on Instagram, like that's
yeah.
how I learned originally was I was watching a lot of YouTube hauls and what were they? They were clothing. So
Mhm.
it's been really easy for me to now go into a store and go, this sells good for us. I'm going to pick this up. That's also another reason why I really enjoyed having inventory boxes this past year
Mhm.
because it kind of made me branch out into other brands. I'm like, well, I've
Yeah.
got the inventory. Let's see how it does. I'm like, oh, I would have never thought that this brand did so well, but here we are. And so when you
Yeah.
go in the thrift store, now you have more understanding and analytics behind you to make the proper decisions. There's sometimes that I'll go into a store and I'm like, I found so much of XYZ brand and I didn't even think about this brand before. I was like, was I just missing it before? Or was it
Hmm.
always, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's been really cool to continue to branch in the clothing, shoe, and even purses. We don't get a ton of purses, but that's kind of the hub we like to stay in.
Hmm. Yeah, and I definitely hear what you're saying because I feel like once I have a few things, either a specific brand or a specific item that I haven't really heard anyone talk about, but it's doing really well for me, I'm going to be looking for that and I'm going to be talking about
Yeah.
it because that's how we all learn. But there's so much of a learning curve, like you said, with, heading towards getting more pallets and liquidation versus in the beginning when you really just kind of want to almost play it safe and just not
Yeah.
invest so much. And I think that's really important advice for anyone just starting out or even debating to go full time. I don't think anyone would advise somebody who's very new to this to just go and buy a pallet.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of work. I mean, yes, it comes to your door, but it seems like a lot of work and very overwhelming, and I don't think it's for everyone either.
Well, and even with liquidation, I feel like, you don't want to spend more than you're willing to risk and potentially
Yeah.
lose. And when you're looking at larger pallets, they
Hmm.
can be anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000. And
Yeah.
if you're starting out, most people start out with $100 or they're starting
Yeah.
out with stuff in their house. And so
Mhm.
they're starting with zero. They're just trying to sell things to make money to then start flipping. And so I think the best way to do it is find places that you can buy stuff by the pound. You can
Mhm.
go to flea markets, you can go to yard sales. Those are some of the really best entry level that doesn't feel like you're taking too much risk. I remember when I would buy like something at our local thrift store for $3. So I'm like, that's so much money. Like, I hope it
Yeah.
sells. But now I'm like willing to pay $10 for an item or
Yeah.
$12. But I now understand in the back of my mind, like, okay, this is a really good Patagonia item. I'm willing to pay
Mhm.
even $20 for it. But I
Yeah.
I have enough education and enough risks that I've taken before that I feel more comfortable doing it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to the thrift store earlier and there were a few items where I thought, a year ago I would have probably picked this up, even though it's, kind of pricier than I would want. Now I'm just like, nah, it's just not worth it. And then vice versa. The other day I went and I saw a pair of Everlane shoes and I'm like, I don't even care what they cost. I will take these home. And
Yeah.
they were marked up. They were like $15. And I hardly spend $15 on anything anymore. I did initially when I didn't know what I was doing. But I
Yeah.
mean, they sold for like 60 something within a week. And so that was totally worth it to me. And I
Worth
knew
it.
they would
Yeah.
do well. Yeah. I was so excited to find them too. They were like brand new. But anyway, yeah,
Those are a gem.
yeah, they are. Oh, they were beautiful too. They were tiny, way too tiny for me, unfortunately. Yeah. So I'm very curious about this as I was, kind of I have been contemplating to go full time, and there's some changes to that I will probably make a separate video about. But in general, I'm always curious, what does the day to day look like? Your daily schedule. Do you put yourself on a schedule? Do you go with the flow? Do you also feel like it's important to have a schedule as a full time reseller? Because a lot of times, you don't have that structure anymore that you have in your 9 to 5 job, right? And you're your own boss. So you need to make the schedule if you want to have one. So what does that look like for you, especially navigating around the kids and the husband and everything?
Yeah, it is. There's so much to this question. I'm really glad that you were asking this one as well, because I feel like when I was working full time and I knew, okay, you only have an hour to photograph, you only have an hour to list, you
Mhm.
can get so much done in that hour. It's amazing. But if you
Yes.
have all day, like I said this to a friend recently, I was like, if you had the whole day to clean your house or you had 2 hours to clean your house, no matter what, it would get done. The problem is that longer time you're going to take all day to do it. And
Yeah.
so I 100% think and totally agree with creating some form of a schedule, because whether we realize it or not, we've been kind of programmed for that ever since we were in school. Like, and I used to think, I remember being in high school going, oh, I hate routine. I hate schedules. Like, I just want to do my own thing. And I got to the realization that all I was doing was just creating my own schedule on my own time. It wasn't that I didn't like schedules. I just wanted to be able to have a say in what I was
Hmm.
doing with my world and my time. And so I think having a schedule is very important. I even think I got in the habit because I am so bad at getting distracted, especially working at the house. And kind of like what you said, what is the dynamic with kids? Oh, I love working from home. And I also hate it at the same time because now the kids don't understand you're working. When you
Yeah.
were working, you were out of the home. When you were home,
Hmm.
you were home. You were mom. You weren't reseller or whatever it was that you were doing. And like even our 16-year-old, I love being able to talk with her, but there'll be times I'm in the middle of doing something and she'll come and sit down and talk with me, and I'll stop and I'll listen. But in my brain, I'm going, oh, I know this is far and few in between now, but I need to work. And I don't want to say that because I don't want her to like feel discouraged. So I've
Right.
even told my husband, I'm like, if we get to a place where we can, get an office, just like a little office space outside of the home, I was like, I would love that. Or even just a shop that's kind of separate from the house. We've even talked about extending out our garage, like trying to find some way to help the kids realize like, hey, while we're home, when we're doing this, we're working. When we're here,
Yeah.
we're home. And I try to do that. Even right now, we have our downstairs that has a bunch of rooms, and that's where we do a lot of our reselling. So we try to keep that down there. And that kind of helps me prospectively too. When I'm down there, I can think I'm working out or I'm working, because we've got a little gym down there too. Whereas I'm upstairs, it's our main housing where our main bedrooms are. And it's like, okay, I'm home. I can clean, different things like that. So I try to do that. The other thing that I do that I was mentioning earlier is do a timer. So if I'm photographing, especially with trying to keep the pace of like 20 items a day, I'll have a whole rack full of items. It's like, okay, we got to get through this whole rack. And then it feels very daunting. And then I do everything to not photograph that huge rack. So what I've started to do is I'll set a timer on my phone for like an hour. It's like, okay, how much can you get done in an hour? And I feel like that kind of helps me, because I'm like, okay, what's my time? What's my time? Instead of being like, oh my gosh, 3 hours just passed and I've only gotten like 10 items done. That really helps with my schedule. And then I also want to start doing better at batching. So I mentioned earlier, I've been doing more with Instagram. I now monetized on YouTube. I want to stay consistent with those, and I want to treat those like it's a part of my business. I've always had more of that short-term thought process where it's like, photograph an item, get it listed, it sells. Really quick, really simple, really easy. YouTube is not that way. Instagram is not that way.
Yep.
So I've always put those two on the back burner because I'm like, well, it's not going to pay me now. I'm like, that's a very short-term thought process, not very long-term thinking. Reselling, not, I don't know, whoever's watching it, you may or may not know this, but when you are doing reselling and then you stop for a vacation or you stop for sickness or something to the tune of that, the business slows down. Like you've got to stay consistent with it on a daily basis. So that consistency is important. Whereas when you're doing YouTube, when you're doing Instagram, when you're doing other things like that, that's more of a residual. That's actually where I've actually seen more residual income coming from. You could take a break for a month and people are still mentioning how you get to certain thresholds and it's a little more sustainable in that regard.
Yeah.
So I'm not there yet, but I know that that's possible. And I had to start thinking more long-term like that. So in that perspective, I've started to, okay, Mondays, got to get the shipping done. Let's try to load up on as many items as we can, listed, photographed, and have them in drafts. So that way we can pace ourselves the rest of the week. Tuesday, let's shoot some photos. Let's shoot some videos. So I'm trying to do more batch work like that. So that way maybe too, I can get to the end of the week and dare I say, actually have a day off, like I feel like I'm constantly working. And so finding some structures or finding what works in your personality, perhaps, I think is one of the really important things about managing this business. Because the good news is you're your own boss. You don't ever have to worry about asking for anyone's for a day off or anything like that. But the bad news is you're your own boss and you probably give yourself a lot more breaks than you would like to admit.
Yeah. I did that whole video where I timed myself and all of my tasks, and it was so eye-opening because I thought, oh, this maybe maybe this takes me like 2 minutes, and it didn't. It took me 10 minutes, and I'm like, huh,
Yeah.
interesting. And it's just really fun to see how do you spend your time, how long does it take you to complete a task, and then when you add it all up, it's like, oh, I'm actually working a lot on this, and for me it's just part-time. So that was quite eye-opening. But I think you're so right about that. There's so many pros to being your own boss, but then also you're your own boss, so it's all the responsibilities on you. And you mentioned YouTube and Instagram already. So besides reselling, are those your two other streams of income, or do you have any other streams of income besides the reselling business or connected to the reselling business that are not directly, based on making sales?
Right. So with YouTube, YouTube is just exactly what I've been doing on Instagram for the last 3 years, just in video form. And
Hmm.
the beautiful thing about that is once it is monetized, the more people watch it, the more money you're going to make from that. And so that's the bulk of where that stream is coming from. I mentioned Instagram. It's not really a stream of income as in like Instagram pays you,
Right.
but I constantly, when I'm showing like, here's my photographing room, I
Hmm.
9 times out of 10, I get one message or two messages that say, hey, where did you get those lights? Where did you get that clothing rack? Oh,
Hmm.
what's that? I need that. And so I can send them an Amazon link, and then you do have an affiliate that way. So
Right.
that's kind of more of, I've always loved sharing what I do. I always love inspiring people. My biggest goal, even before I knew about reselling, was I was that mom that had that tug of war feeling like you need to be in corporate America because that's how you're financially going to supply for your family. But then the tug of war back home where it's like, but my kids need me, but they
Hmm.
want me to be at that field trip, but they want me because they're sick and they need to go to the doctors, but my corporate America job isn't helping to really give me that flexibility. So when I
Hmm.
finally found ways that you could make money from home, not just even in reselling, I began to be like, I want to help other moms who feel this tug of war, or even dads who feel that tug of war of like, I should be supplying, but you don't have to do it outside of the home. You can still be
Yeah.
home and be profitable. So I've just always continued that with Instagram and YouTube. And so I know that that
Hmm.
opportunity continual for different ways to make income is going to continue to pop up, especially now that I've been over 10,000 followers on Instagram. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten different like
Nice.
pitches from people, but it has to make sense for me. It
Right.
has to make sense for my model. It has to make sense for my family dynamic. But then when I
Hmm.
do find something that works for me, I love to share it with people. So yeah, that's kind of where those come from. And that's why I was saying it's so hard
Yeah.
to see those as parts of your business, because it's sharing my business, it's sharing how to do it, it's sharing how to help so other people can do the same thing, but it's not profitable in the start. It's not profitable
Hmm.
for a while. You have to stay
Yeah.
consistent with it. But once it is profitable, it's really nice. It's really,
Yeah.
really helpful. It gives more freedom. So
I'm excited to experience that hopefully soon.
yeah.
I will say with YouTube, the best thing for me is like when I showed something in a video and then somebody contacts me and they're like, "Oh, can I buy this from you?" And usually
Yes,
don't even have
that's
it
good.
listed yet because I'm so
Yes.
slow. And I'm just like, "Oh, this is perfect. I could do this all day, you know? If I don't have to draft the listing and all of that, if somebody just comes and buys it from my video, I'm like, this I would love to do that all the time."
Yeah, and I was actually doing something very similar. I created a Facebook group that I was just planning to do lives on. And I did it with the mindset initially of who's local to me, because the people who are
Yeah.
starting to find out locally that I did Poshmark or eBay, they
Hmm.
would be trying to buy stuff on there. I'm like, no, 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 like I can drive this to you.
Yeah.
Like, don't pay the shipping
Yes.
for that. Let's save you some money. And so then I was like, I need an outlet for the people who are local to me. And so I started to do YouTube lives, and those were pretty
Hmm.
profitable too. But exactly what you said, I got to the realization of like, why am I doing it like this when I could be filming this and just
Yeah.
putting it on YouTube? And then you're creating even more of a dynamic that more people are seeing it. And you're right. I've had several people message me.
Yeah.
Even at one point, I made the statement that I wanted to do some mystery boxes to clear out some old inventory.
Hmm.
I had someone reach out to me on Instagram and go, can I have one of those boxes? I hadn't even created them yet. And I was
Yeah.
like, absolutely, I will customize one for you right now. And that was that one video generated essentially $70 because I was
Nice.
able to make that money on that.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love YouTube for that. And I love that people are reaching out too. And they're just like, oh, can I buy this from you? And I'm like, absolutely. I will get it out today.
Yeah, those are fun. I feel like they're more of a
Yeah.
personal touch, and I enjoy that.
Yeah. Also that. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about your support system with your family, etc. But when it comes to your business outside of working together with your husband, are there any other tools that you use that help you with your business? Do you have a virtual assistant? Do you have any other help with the business side of things?
Yeah. So when I was part time still, there was the summer before I went full time. I
Mhm.
was trying to make a certain amount of money for the summer. And I remember I reached out to a couple of the higher reseller influencers, if you will. And I was like, okay, you've been doing this a little longer than I have. I need to make this much money this summer. What
Mhm.
do I need to do it? And one person just broke it down, really great equation. They're like, this many sales, if this is your average sales price, and just do this, if you can make this happen, then you'll be able to make that money. The other person asked me, what platforms are you on? And at the time, I was just on Poshmark. And
Yeah.
she was like, you need to get everything over to eBay. I was like, I don't have the time. It's like, I am working full time. I cannot, and I'm just trying to keep up with listings. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have time to cross list everything over to eBay. And she said, get a virtual assistant. So I went on to Upwork, and this is actually, I'm so bad at this. I need to make a video about this because it has been my best kept secret. I mean, I share it with everyone and anyone, but they're like, how did you do it? So I need to make a video to do that walkthrough.
Yeah.
But I hired a virtual assistant. She is still
Mm-hmm.
with me today. I love it because it feels like I have an employee who
Mm-hmm.
can help assist with anything. And I know her family, like she has 4 kids, and this is helping her like be able to stay in the house that they're in. And because like her husband lost his job through COVID, and it
Mm-hmm.
just brings more of that feeling and touch of like I get to impact a family
Yeah.
by the business that I've created. I love
Yeah.
that. And I mean, she is in the Philippines, so we have like an opposite schedule. So I can get
Mm-hmm.
stuff ready, and then she'll work on it through the night, and it's ready to go in the morning for me. So it's really
Nice.
nice like that. And her job has kind of ebbed and flowed. So after a couple months last year where like her internet was slow, or they
Mm-hmm.
literally had a flood. She took a picture one time
Yeah.
and showed me like, we had flooding, so sorry I couldn't work. I was like, I feel for you, and I'm so sorry about that, but I need to figure out another source to be like very consistent with listings, especially when I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to increase my listings per day
Yeah.
from like 10 to 15, and then I went from 15 to 20, kind of still the 18, 20 range. That's hard to kind of keep up, but
Yeah.
I was like, I need to find something that can be a little more consistent that way. And so I
Mm-hmm.
actually started working with Hammock, which essentially is another virtual assistant
Mm-hmm.
uh, community group, but they have a couple virtual assistants that they tie to you, so that way if one doesn't isn't able to work, the other one can. And I was like, I like that. I like a little more stability in that,
Mm-hmm.
and it is really nice. They're kind of in the same scenario. I can be getting drafts to them, photos and title, and just a couple other little information. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, I wake up in the morning, I've got 40 items ready for me on eBay. I'm like, this is
Nice.
gold. And I have now saved time, and I've been able to like spend more time with my kids. I signed them up for swim lessons this summer. We have our youngest daughter who's in dance. Our 2 boys did a camp. Like I feel like I have more time, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still keeping the same pace that I am in my
Yeah.
reselling business because I have both a virtual assistant on Upwork, and then I use
Mm-hmm.
Hammock to draft my listings. So my virtual assistant cross lists. So I publish everything on eBay. Anything that happens that day, she sends it over to Poshmark. She
Mm-hmm.
makes sure that my Poshmark closet is shared. She'll do sales on Thursdays and whenever there are likes. And then I also have a Excel sheet that has all my inventory. So when she sees the items that have been drafted in eBay, whatever those codes, those SKU numbers are, she puts them into my Excel sheet. And that's kind of how those things have ebbed and flowed. So even though,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, my husband comes in and comes out, he really tries to help with the shipping because that does tend to be overwhelming and take a long time.
Yeah.
Um, then I have these other services that help me stay consistent and be able to keep the pace that I need to for my business.
Awesome. And I think that's one of the sort of common threads that I'm starting to see. Almost anyone I've talked to who is full time and has been for a while, there has to be some help in some way because it's
Yeah.
just really hard to make a full-time income and just do it all on your own and just do it all yourself. And I think it's really important to get that message across that you don't have to do it all by yourself, you know? And I mean, not everybody can afford hiring, an actual assistant, but there's different ways of making your life easier that are fairly affordable, even when you're part-time. I mean, I don't share my own closet and I use List Perfectly, and that makes my life easier. I still do a lot of the legwork, but I wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for those, services and
Yeah.
platforms.
Well, and for example, when I first hired my virtual assistant from Upwork and I had her cross list everything over, granted, she is in the Philippines, so their hourly
Mhm.
wage is a lot lower than our hourly wage.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, she worked and got everything cross listed. And at the time, I think I had 700 or 800 items on Poshmark that she cross listed over to
Mhm.
eBay. That consistency, I think I paid maybe $300, maybe less for her that month,
Mhm.
and it profited me on eBay over $1,000. So it might not seem like it's cost effective to do it, But when you can actually look or even just try something out for like a month or 2 months or even 3 and go, okay, this is profiting me better. It does make sense. But I agree with you. You know, if you're just starting, I don't think that's the best time to do it. I think you need to learn how you want your items drafted. You need to learn the clothing. You need to learn the different styles, because then if you do have a virtual assistant that you have to train and they've never described clothing before, you can't say whether it's wrong or right because you don't know either. So I mean, I was 2.5 years, 2 years. Yeah, I was 2 years into my journey when I finally hired help. So, and you know, kind of to your point too, you also mentioned like when you start to see the people who are more full time, they do hire help. I think that is for the people that have a lower average sales price. If you have someone who has a ton of luxury around where they are located, or that's just more of their MO. They don't like to pick up anything that's, you know, less than 100 plus that they're going to profit from. I think that you can sustain a lot because you don't have as many active listings.
True.
You have a higher, you know, amount that you're going to get on a monthly basis. I know someone out in Portland who does reselling part-time, and I swear she couples with what I do on a full-time basis, but it's because of the types of quality items that she can get on a regular, as well as that's how she has modeled her business, her store from. So I think that it's just based on your model, however way you want to do it and scale. Some people are also just really good at keeping it that way. They like it, they get a good amount of money coming in, and they don't need extra help. They just do it when they can, and they're okay to let it go when something else happens in their world. I want to be able to walk away from my business someday and it keep going without me. So that's kind of my end goal.
Love that. So you mentioned Poshmark and eBay. Are those the only two platforms that you sell on currently, or are there any others?
Those are the two that I feel like I can personally juggle. I'm sure you understand that, like, when you sell something on eBay and you have to remember to remove them off of multiple platforms, that takes so much time, even just having two platforms. So what I really love doing and what I really want to get back to doing is when I have a lump sum and it's on my clothing rack, I want to go live, or I want to do an Instagram live, like whatever that looks like. And that's like my first step to try to sell stuff. You're doing a video, you're showing the pieces. It's not inventoried yet. It hasn't been photographed. You don't have to do any other description except for what you're saying. Someone says they want it. Someone says they don't. If not, good. They're still hanging there and you can immediately go and photograph them. From that point, then we can put them into Poshmark or eBay and then go into Poshmark. I kind of want to have that pace going, but that's the only other thing that I feel like I would consider at this point, just for my sake and sanity.
And I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, diversifying, etc., sending stuff to the RealReal and to ThreadUp. Is that something you've dabbled with, or not at this point?
No, I have. And actually, that was as soon as I stopped talking, I was like, yeah, that actually is kind of another source that I do on the tail end. And something else I'm wanting to play around with is Flip. So I see the opportunity where it's like, give this a good run on Instagram, or I'm sorry, on Poshmark and eBay. And if you feel like, okay, I need to make more room in my inventory, or I know some people are like, this is a good item for the RealReal, I'm just going to send it straight there. I kind of like to give it a shot in my stores. And typically when I use ThreadUp, I haven't used the RealReal yet, but when I use ThreadUp, it's more like I've tried to clearance this out many times. I've already relisted this item. I'm getting a lot of likes, but not anyone willing to buy it. I'm tired of looking at it. I just want to get like some money back, recoup some of the money. Or I do want to start using Flip. I think that that's a really great opportunity to work with someone else who might not get inventory, or, you know, might live in a place where it's really hard to find that stuff, and be able to sell items. And then you're kind of, it's very passive at that point. So I just haven't branched into those two, the live and then the sending things off. I'm going to do that soon.
I've been watching a lot of like YouTube auctions lately, and I'm intrigued, but I'm like, I'm not ready to do that. Also, I don't know how well it would do for clothing, but I think Instagram live sales can be very successful from what I've seen.
I feel like it's not only successful with just good brands, but I feel like you can almost play with style. Hey, this is a very on trend Y2K 90s style. Like you almost get that Depop vibe where it can be something that you bought from Walmart, or, you know, like is a Walmart brand or a Target brand, but it's the style that catches someone's attention that they're willing to buy it. Whereas I tend to really focus on Poshmark and eBay based on what is the kind of brands, you know, are they good brands that sell? Because I want that to catch someone's attention if they're searching Nike or they're searching, you know, American Eagle, something like that. So
yeah, absolutely. So can we talk a little bit about goals you've achieved with your business so far that you're really proud of, and then also any particular goals you might still have, maybe for, a specific time frame, like next year at this time, I want to achieve X, Y, and Z. Is there anything out there that you can think of?
Always. I love goals. Um, so I just feel very proud that I was able to go full time and be able to replace my income with it. And when I say full time, it's not full time 40, 60 hours a week. Kind of like we talked about, I've been able to juggle having
Yeah.
my family's life and then be able to do reselling, but keep a good pace. I don't have to
Hmm.
work 40 hours a week to make the full-time income, but I'm
Yeah.
making what I was at a full-time job. And
Right.
I keep an on-call status at that job because I just remember being that full-time person that didn't have coverage and wanted to go on vacation or stuff and didn't
Yeah.
have that. So, but even those days I'll go back in and I've made like $99 that day and I'm like, that's it. Like, oh, because I made so much more in reselling. So that's a huge
Yes.
goal for me. I'm very proud that we've been able to do that. I'm actually at this point looking at getting pallets and starting to utilize or integrate that into our business model. And I feel like I'm going to be able to keep a higher pace of listings a day because I
Yeah.
love to go source. We still love our trips, and that will always be a part of our business. But when you're trying to get 20 items up a day or 25 items up a day, suddenly you don't have enough time to
Yeah.
source all that stuff. So having some stuff sent to my doorstep is really going to help.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like it's really great that we're at a goal now, like that we've been able to accomplish the goal of we have enough capital to take a look at getting some of the pallets. And as funny as it sounds, I got interviewed by NASDAQ on behalf of Poshmark about a
Wow.
year into working full time with on Poshmark's platform. And
Hmm.
that was it wasn't a goal I was trying to achieve, but it was one of those moments that it was like you're on the right track and keep going.
Hmm.
Because just 1 year prior, working at an investment firm where I'm telling, people like about different NASDAQ or different stocks or mutual funds and stuff like that, to being now a part of a company that was being interviewed for
Yeah.
NASDAQ, I was like, that helps me realize I'm on the right track. Because
Yeah.
leaving my full-time job, there was definitely a lot of skepticism. There was definitely a lot of like, oh, you think you can do better without this job kind of attitude.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments of like, you're doing the right thing, keep going with it. And it was encouraging me and motivating me moving forward. Um, as far as goals, what I'd like to do a year from now. So I've started to take a look at, we're kind of maxing out on our space downstairs, but I want to keep scaling my business. We have a pretty good, like, we don't have land, but we have a
Hmm.
nice lot of property for our house. So we've talked about, like, should we get a shop? Or
Hmm.
recently, my husband said it might be better to extend our garage to allow us to be able to have more inventory in there because the permits that it takes to have like a
Yeah.
standalone separate building versus an attachment to
Yeah.
your house is an entirely different ballgame. So I've learned.
Hmm.
So I want to be at a place where I feel like I have more room to grow because
Hmm.
I've seen that I slow down if I'm like, I only have two more totes empty before I'm like max to capacity. So
Yeah.
I want to feel like, okay, just keep going. Head to the computer, like
Yeah.
let's just keep moving. I feel like I could grow a lot more if I had more space. So a year from now, I really hope we can have something kind of in place with that. And then, as I mentioned kind of loosely before, I want to have a separate office space. So our local town, they're in the process of building a business. They're calling it like center. And
Hmm.
it's becoming more common now. And I love this perspective where people are beginning to realize there's more jobs at home, but not everyone wants to be at home all the time. So there's these community office
Yes.
spaces that you can
Yes.
rent
Yep.
for community-esque things, but it's separate from your house. I want to be able to
Hmm.
have that. That'd be a really great place to like film YouTube, take photos. If my husband has, business interviews or not interviews, meetings that he needs to do, like they can be
Hmm.
separate from the house. We don't need to worry about
Yeah.
is the house clean or dirty. Like you can
Yeah.
do that. You can go to work, work if you will, and that's just going to be like 5 minutes away from us. So I'd love to see
Mhm.
that occur because again, for the efficiency's sake, I feel like that would be beneficial. And then if we do ended up hiring someone part-time locally or full-time locally, I'd feel a lot more comfortable being able to have them more in like an office space
Yeah.
like that, or like we've talked about, maybe having the shop or even our garage extended. That would feel a lot more better versus, hey, come into our house and come come downstairs where like my 16-year-old's
Right.
bedroom is. And like, you know, so I kind of still want to keep a little bit of protection and stuff in that regard. So that's kind of the forward thinking that we're looking at. I am at this point making gross, I mean, on a dip, probably $6,000-7,000. On a good month, really close to 10,000. So I really
Nice.
want to see that number consistently be over 10,000, and then moving forward to that, 12 and whatnot. But I'm also really evaluating, how has this business model been for us for the last couple of years? Is this going to be really viable for us, or do we need to focus on an average sales price, higher average sales price? Do we need to be a little more picky with the items that we're picking up now that we have 3 years worth of history? And I mean, it's still going to be beneficial to take a look at just 1 year ago, because trends change all the time. Brands that sold for us 3 years ago isn't the same. But I'm kind of looking at that too, trying to figure out, what do we need to tweak to continue to improve? So I'm always looking at those sort of elements for our business.
How much inventory do you have on hand? Do you know?
On hand, that's a different story from what's listed, I'll be honest.
Okay, how much is listed?
Okay, so I just started, actually, I was preparing a bag of inventory for ThreadUp yesterday, and I saw 2,400 and something, but we were at like 2,600. I've been trying to clear out a lot of stuff, so that's why it's dipped. But yeah, with the inventory we have on hand, because we have the general merchandise palette I just got, and the shoes that still need to be cleaned, that I think we're probably close to 3,000, or at least like 2,800.
Wow. I'm like always around 1,000, and I'm like, I feel like the walls are closing in.
Might as well.
Right, same thing.
Right.
But I have one room, and I'm really trying to contain it in that one room, because I want to have that space where it's like, okay, if I'm in here, I'm working, whether it's on the full-time job or on the part-time job, and it's like, I don't want to have, clothing for reselling in my bedroom anymore, because I did that in the beginning, and it's no fun. So, is there anything that you feel like within the reselling community, is there any aspect of this business that you feel like is maybe not talked about as much, but you think is really important and we should be talking about it more?
I feel like the reality, I think you look on Instagram or you take a look at YouTube, and there's an energy boost because, oh, look at what I got at thrift store, at ThreadUp, or in a pallet. Like, there's a lot of excitement in that. And I don't think there's enough talk about, what are you doing on a daily basis? Sometimes I feel like a broken record when I'm on my Insta stories, because I'm like, it's, here I am shipping items again. Here I am photographing items again. But the reality is I think we need to glamorize that more, because that's the only way you will have a business, especially with eBay. I've noticed with Poshmark, like, you could have 100 items you list in one day and not list for the rest of the week, and you're still going to see sales. With eBay, you miss one day and the algorithm hates you. Like, it's so, and I try my best to try to schedule like the Sundays listings, but sometimes I don't. Or when we're doing trips, like, I'll miss a day and I'm like, it totally impacts our sales. And so I really want more talk around the reality that it's the steaming the stuff, it's the cleaning the shoes, it's the pulling the orders for the, shipping out. There's power in our small habits that we're doing on a daily basis, even though it can feel so mundane and so boring after a while. And, you find ways to make incentives for that. I've started to work out more again, and I feel like I get more of an energy boost to go, okay, now I can do that task I have to do every single day, like whatever it is. I feel like the reality is we can get so caught up in like, buy. And that's why we end up with death piles, is because people love what that feels like, and not enough of the listing and the sharing and the sales, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think, and everybody always says, my favorite part of reselling is finding those gems at the thrift store. I think that's, a lot of us have that in common. And then my second favorite time is when I make a sale, and I get paid. But it's all the in-between stuff that I feel like is still not talked about enough. And we talk about it more, but like you said, it's not glamorous when I'm sitting here and I'm doing my shipping, and I'm still in my pajamas most days.
I know, I was about to say, hair's half in a bun, like
like, it's not pretty. And I have a horrible system back there. I mean, it works, but it doesn't. So I need to literally, like, if I sell a jacket, I need to dive into the very like furthest corner bottom box, and it's like I need to rearrange half the room to get in there, and I'm like, this is not pretty. Like, I'm not putting this on YouTube. And then I'm thinking, maybe I should, but it's all these tasks that take up so much time. And I think a lot of times it's the fact that Instagram and YouTube and everything, it's such a highlight reel. And a lot of us, I think subconsciously, we don't want to expose ourselves to like too much criticism,
Yeah.
because if I shared every single aspect and how I do every single thing, I'm sure people would be like, why are you doing it like that and not like this? Right. And so I think that's a really important point to, glamorize that more, like the mundane tasks, because they are part of the business. And I think people go into this a lot of times having very different expectations from what the reality of reselling is, especially full-time reselling. I've been kind of dabbling, of course, in making this serious in the last few months, where I had a little bit more time and just trying to get myself on a full-time schedule. And it becomes less fun, honestly. It's still fun,
Yeah.
but it's less fun than when you do it part-time. And I think that's really important to keep in mind for anyone who debates going full-time. Is
Mhm.
it something that you're actually willing to do? Are you willing to do all these tasks every single day, basically? And are you still going to enjoy doing it?
Yeah, I definitely, if you're wanting to go full time because it makes sense for your business or your family and
Yeah.
the dynamics of what you're going through. I've known a lot of people that they're like, I have a health condition that,
Mm-hmm.
or I have an autoimmune disease that I have to stay home, or I am very energetic the first half of my day and then I want
Yeah.
to sleep the second half of the day. So reselling makes sense. I feel like to those people who the full time makes sense, you need to find the things that are your joys. So the reason why I started my Instagram account was so I could find other people just like me. And I
Mm-hmm.
specifically created a sole reseller Instagram, and I didn't add any of my friends locally. Like I didn't want that scrutiny. I didn't want anyone looking at what it was, oh, you're doing that, or can you even
Mm-hmm.
be profitable at that? Like I just wanted to find people who got it, who have fun, who will
Yeah.
celebrate when I find something really awesome with me, who I can learn from, who might know about a new feature that I didn't know about, like all of those different things. And so I find a lot of joy in YouTube and I find a lot of joy in my Instagram because it's your coworkers, like being
Yeah.
able to talk with you today. It's like
Yeah.
I love that because even though I'm working home alone a majority of the time, I still have people like you that I can
Yeah.
talk with and you understand it and you get it.
Yeah.
So I think you need to find those things that are your joys that you can, as funny as it sounds, but do the listing together, do the steaming together. And
Yeah.
it's like, it sucks. It's not glamorous. We're half put together, but we're making this business work and we're kicking butt and taking names in the process. So I
Exactly.
definitely would say find your ways to make this business profitable and sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we're wrapping things up, Ashley, is there anything else you would like to share with my viewers? Maybe remind everybody where they can find you, or any last advice that you have for everyone?
Yeah. Again, my Instagram is Ashley Wheeler of 8. I actually believe my YouTube is just Ashley Wheeler 8. And that's where you can find me, talk with me. I commonly tell people that you can ask me a message, direct message me. I will probably send you a voice memo because that's just faster for me. But I love that connection and I love hearing people going, hey, I'm a single parent who is found this because of you. And now I'm making money with it. Like that excites me. So, and you don't
Yeah.
have to have that scenario. I just love to hear your wins. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about anything else as we were talking, like what else I would say. And I was reminded that when I first was kind of like, okay, my full time job is not going to work for me. I need something flexible. What's flexible? And I was like, well, real estate's kind of flexible. So I remember talking with a real estate agent and I was like, what should I do? What do I need to prepare for? What are some licenses that you need? Like trying to get all the download. And I remember at one point her telling me, when you start this, you need to have at least 6 months of savings for your everyday utilities and mortgage. You at least need 6 months because it's probably going to take you that long to get one sale to at least
Mm-hmm.
get started. And I feel like a lot of people can look at what we do for reselling and just think it's different. It's not the same as many other things, but the reality is there are a lot of people that don't have health benefits with their jobs. There are a lot of people that are these service jobs or real estate agents, and they have to save a lot of money to make that their full-time thing. And so reselling is no different in that way. And I felt actually kind of encouraged that because it doesn't feel so like this is abnormal. This is a
Mm-hmm.
thing that a lot of people are doing, but you have to be mindful about it. If you want to go full-time, you need to make sure you've got enough money saved up to start. So you might be juggling the part-time reselling and then full-time job. Or, if you're trying to get debt taken care of, this is a really great way to have that stream of income to make that a reality. So whatever that is, just remember that there are so many other professions that are very similar in getting started, and it's a huge learning curve. There's a lot to learn. You can learn a lot through Instagram. You can learn a lot through YouTube and then asking other resellers. And yes, there's so many people that, after a while, people feel flooded with questions and it might be hard to answer. But I would just say continue to be persistent. I remember when I first started, I reached out to probably like 5 or 6 different resellers, both part-time and full-time. And I was like, is this possible? Like, are you actually making money from it? Because it just blew my mind. It didn't feel possible. And the other thing I would say is, in this day and age that we're in now, I actually saw a quote or someone mentioned something the other day that we are in the middle of a new work revolution. We look in our past and we look at the industrial age and we look at all these different ages. I feel like we're operating into a new era. And so feel comfortable that reselling is going to be one of those that I think fits so perfectly and what's kind of going to be coming as far as professions go nowadays. I mean, for crying out loud, we didn't have Uber or we didn't have like DoorDash like a couple years ago, but here we are, and now we wouldn't know what we would do without some of these different services. So I think that things are going to continue to grow in the secondhand market and the thrifting world. And I think it's going to become more normalized, but I think because of that, we're going to get a lot more people that are wanting to do it too. So
yes, well, we get to be the mentors then, when our channels really blow up one day.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for talking to me today, and so much great advice, so much great information. And I'm sure everybody who's watching got something out of it. And so, of course, all your information is linked below for anyone who's not following you yet. You definitely should. I absolutely love your channel. I enjoy your videos so much, and I love the vlogs that you're doing with your husband going thrifting. It's so much fun. And yeah, I'm sure we'll chat soon. And thank you so much
definitely.
again. All
Thank you.
right.
Bye.
Bye.